there were a series of recordings that I did with Robbie Williams that he referred to himself as a performing monkey. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, he's not just performing as a pop star. He's sort of, he's performing when he's with the kids, in Stoke-on-Trent, and he's not as tough as them. And I just love this idea of this little performing monkey, whose whole life is a performance.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, the rise, fall, and resurgence of pop singer Robbie Williams is recounted in director Michael Gracey's musical biopic, Better Man. Narrated by Williams, the film follows the singer from childhood outcast to music sensation, battling the demons of fame while finding his true voice as an artist. Soaring to new heights, Williams reaches stardom but never feels truly evolved from his younger self. In addition to Better Man, Gracey's other directorial credits include the feature film The Greatest Showman, the documentary Pink, All I Know So Far, and episodes of The Playboy Club. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Gracey spoke with director Jason Reitman about filming Better Man. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
There is not a simple shot in this movie. I love this movie. I just watched it for the second time, and I think it's absolutely extraordinary. And I'm honored to be here because for these DGA screenings, you always ask a fellow director to do it. And it's an honor when someone asks me. And I'm very honored that you asked me. And I'm particularly honored because usually I think as a filmmaker, and probably anyone in this room, you watch a movie and you go, well, there's a few of these things that I think I could do. And then you watch this movie and you realize there's nothing in this movie that I'd be able to do. It's extraordinary in every way. It's extraordinary as a film, as a musical, and also as a technical achievement. And I think the first thing I'd love to ask, I already know the answer to this, but I think it probably, to the benefit of the audience, the way in as far as this high concept idea of rather than having an actor, a human being perform at the center of this, portray Robbie with Robbie himself, or an actor to do this with a CGI creature, raising the level of difficulty into the stratosphere. And somehow you got over this. Like, I don't know how you did it. Where did this come from?
All of that is far too kind, but and before I even answer this question, thank you so much for doing this. Saturday Night, which Jason directed, is one of my favorite films. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, please make sure you see it. It's incredible. It is jazz, both in the writing and the editing, and it's extraordinary. So I'm thrilled that you're here. The conceit of the monkey was to try and lens the film in a different way and come at it in a way that was going to hopefully tell a more emotional story. And there were a series of recordings that I did with Robbie Williams that he referred to himself as a performing monkey. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, he's not just performing as a pop star. He's sort of, his whole life's a performance. He's performing when he's with the kids, in Stoke-on-Trent, and he's not as tough as them, so he has to put on this performance. He told me this great story, which I couldn't fit into the film, which was his nan, who just gave him unconditional love his whole life, and his nan was just this rock, this, as many grandparents are for us. And his nan had an account at the local newspaper shop, the local news agency, and he'd be with the other kids who were proper tough kids from Stoke-on-Trent, and he would say to them, I'm going to go and shoplift. What do you want? and the kids would say, "Oh, I want this," and grab me this chocolate bar and all this stuff. And then he'd go into the store and he would just put it all on the counter and charge it to his nan's account. And then he'd scoop it all up and put it under his jacket and come tearing out of the shop as if he'd stolen it. And then share his spoils with all the tough kids. So he just, he's always been putting on this act.
Yeah.
And I just thought, and for his dad who loves entertainment, he's always performing for his dad. And I just love this idea of this little performing monkey, whose whole life is a performance. And then there's other benefits in that I think you feel more for the monkey. Humans are wired, particularly cinematically, we're very numb to seeing human suffering. But when you see an animal suffering, your level of empathy is really, greater.
For the first time, so when I was watching, the first time I watched the film, obviously I just watched the film. Today I was watching it, with this kind of critical eye, like I'm trying to figure it out, trying to figure the magic trick out. And as I watched that, I realized I was going, okay, who would I cast if I had tried to cast a human being? And as I kept watching scene to scene, I realized you would have never been able to get to these different levels because you're reaching heightened levels in every scene. He's doing crazy things. I mean, the amount of drugs he's doing, the way he's treating other people, the emotionality that he's, I think that's part of it, of a musical in general, is that you are opening your heart and you are sharing things really out loud that had a human being said, you might be, but with the monkey, you just buy completely in.
Yeah. The other aspect, which you're completely right about, is because I wanted to explore both Robbie's internal life and his external life. The great thing about a musical is that you do get to just sing your feelings, your inner thoughts, your inner feelings. It's one of the joys of musicals, kind of like Shakespeare with soliloquy. And then you set that contract with the audience very early on. You're like, we're going to be singing. People will just break into song. You're going to have to go with it. And that is sort of what bumps for some people.
Did you always know you were going to do musicals? If you didn't, Michael also directed The Greatest Showman, one of the most successful musicals of the last decade. I'm curious if that was just like,
no.
Did you know that about yourself?
No, people ask, are you just going to do musicals? And the answer is no. But I've always loved music-driven films.
Yeah.
Like, Saturday Night is a music-driven film, no question. The Mission is a music-driven film. It would not be that film without that score. The films that Quentin Tarantino does, they're music-driven films. I love music in storytelling. I think it's incredibly powerful. With this, you sort of set the contract with the audience and you say, this is a musical, we're going to break into song. And the great thing about a musical
is... You set 10 contracts with the audience.
Yeah. But the great thing about a musical is it is already a heightened reality. And then you add a monkey on top of that.
Yeah.
It's an even more heightened reality.
Right.
And what is great about that is because you're exploring what's going on inside someone's head, you're going to be stepping into moments of fantasy. And it's a very short trip from a singing and dancing monkey to pure fantasy.
Right.
And that an audience is very happy to slide between those two places. And it's not jarring.
And I'm curious, and like my brain is cycling through all these moments that I love from the film, which are exactly as you described. And I'm curious how many of those are screenplay, storyboard. If I may, I'm going to throw out like a couple examples. He's in the car. He's reckless. He's out of control. He pierces the water and he's floating. Screenplay, storyboard, is this something that comes to you from music? Where does that come from?
Yeah, so the great thing is that I knew what songs that we wanted in the script at these moments, because obviously these songs already existed. So we would sort of write the script and then go searching for the song that lyrically would give us, something deeper or more meaningful in that moment. So Come Undone is a perfect one for when he's gone, he's left the band, he's driving away, and he's spiraling. And so Come Undone and the lyrics of that song work so perfectly. And then we were sort of going, okay, once he drives away, once he goes into the fog, are we then going into the fog of his mind? And you go, yeah, but fog can sort of still be considered reality. So then there's these red flares that line the street and they sort of consume the world. And then we're like, could also be reality, but it's now you're stepping into fantasy. And then he comes upon the bus and then his dad is in.
The bus is so good.
And it's right on the lyric of "And I'm your son" as he looks through the bus at his dad, and it's taking him back to being that little kid standing on the street watching his dad leave, which again is a true story. And so by then you really are in the world of his mind, and actually the hitting the water is actually. And it's very few frames, but he actually looks forward and you think it's another car coming towards him.
Yeah.
But it's actually a wall of water, and that's the reflection of his own car driving into the water. And then you have the moment of impact. And then you have the girls, which you get a heads up in the radio announcement. And again, true story and kind of horrifying that they had to set up helplines all around the world, not here in America, when Robbie left Take That, because girls were killing themselves. They were committing suicide. And so they had to set up a suicide helpline in multiple countries around the world.
I have to say, and I may be different from the audience, and I apologize if I am, but I did grow up here. I was vaguely familiar with Robbie Williams. And I didn't know any of the songs in this movie before I watched it. This could have been a completely original musical had you not told me otherwise. I know that may be embarrassing, but it's true for me at least. And it's one of the reasons I think the movie is so extraordinary and so successful is that the movie I came into literally could have been a fictitious movie about a person I'd never heard of because I really didn't know his story otherwise. And I think you handled the film perfectly for an audience who would need a suicide helpline at the breakup of Take That, or me, someone coming in who just didn't know anything about it. Was that something you thought about?
Yeah, but obviously when originally pitching the film, people were like, well, you're never going to get an American audience. And I kept saying, well, in A Star Is Born, the latest incarnation, I don't know whether Bradley Cooper's character is a real star or not. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. I just buy into his narrative and I care about him, and I go on this emotional journey watching that film with that character. So I was sort of like, this could be an original musical. It could be a made-up pop star. And so knowing that I was servicing that in an American audience, and then for a British and European audience and Australia, I was servicing an audience that's coming with a lot of context already for those songs, in their own life. They've got their own personal experience. And so there you're doing something completely different where you're trying to give a new context narratively to songs that people already know.
Right. I want to ask you about two things. And one, something I think that you've been doing for a long time, and one I think you were doing for the first time on this film. First, I want to ask you about directing a musical. And I'm curious, the way that you even just broke down that sequence in the car, and I can tell you're already you're thinking about the lyrics, how they're you're thinking of, it seems edit to edit already as you're listening to the song. I know you directed music videos before, you directed feature films, and I'm curious if that's how you listen to songs. Is that how you listen to songs as you prepared for this film? Does the movie play for you when you're listening to a song?
Yeah. So even before the music of this, I had the interviews that I did with Rob. So I'd sort of chop them up almost like a radio play, and I would just play them and shut my eyes and imagine if I could create the film in my head, just listening to the voice of him telling his life story. And then I would add the songs. And I find music very powerful. I think it bypasses the intellect and it taps into something deeper where it just hits you here. And so as a result, I've always just loved listening to music and imagining what could be a visual that accompanies it. So that's something I've always just enjoyed and loved. And the sad reality is that you don't always get to realize your imagination. You don't.
When you look at the film, do you feel like it fully realized what you had imagined, or are you going, man, it's 80%?
Yeah, I was just talking to Spencer Susser about this, who worked on the film, and he's an amazing director as well. But I think that you go. I think Showman. I have a lot harder time watching Showman because it was my first film, and so I didn't realize a lot of things that were in my head. And then like everyone, you sort of learn from the lessons from that, and then you apply them to the what next. So this is much more successful at getting what's in my head up on the screen.
Right. It's hard for me to imagine there being more, but because like every shot is an opportunity in this movie, and every shot in this film is the hardest shot in one of my movies. Like there's a moment he's in the bathroom and he's doing heroin, and there's a shot from above and water starts to come through the ground. And as an audience member, as someone who makes movies, you think, oh, this is going to be a sequence now about the room filling with water. And it's like, no, that's just one shot. And then he follows her out and he goes out the front door and he goes of the balconies beginning to fall. And then the moon pops, it becomes the spotlight, the feathers start to come out. And it's like, there are musical numbers between the musical numbers. And I'm genuinely asking this as someone who has no idea how you're doing this. Is this in the script? Is this in the storyboards? Is this the kind of film where you have to know how every shot is going to be accomplished months in advance? Can anything be changed on the day?
Yeah, Cam, it's a lot of iterating, and it's a lot of, and I did the same on Showman. I sort of shot a video version of the film out just when I could grab actors in my office with my iPhone, anytime I had with them. I would just do these rehearsal process. And that is one of the great advantage of musicals is you sort of lock people in for a rehearsal process just because everyone's terrified about the musical numbers.
Right.
And so you get this time before the film to really rehearse it out. And so in that, I would basically do, like a really bad version of the film that looks like, half the shots, sometimes it's with the star, sometimes it's with your mate, sometimes it's with a family member just standing there. But you're trying to block out the whole film so that you can watch it and go, this doesn't work, this needs more work.
Right.
But that iterative process and that rough version ends up becoming full of storyboards, video viz, what else? Previs, 3D previs, and it's a real concept art for the wide shots.
Yeah.
So it's a real mashup of everything you can get your hands on to sort of try and convey what the intention is when you end up on set. And I end up playing that for the heads of department and being like, this is what we're chasing. And I think that, in the musical numbers, you sort of iterate those, something like She's the One on the boat.
Yeah.
There's probably somewhere near 34 different rehearsals of that with different choreography, different scenes that we're going in and out of.
And is this happening during prep? Like, are you in the middle of doing your traditional prep with your keys and then going into a studio and doing dance rehearsal? Yeah,
but sometimes like a number like that could start a year and a half before we even start prep. It's just the choreographer and his assistant.
I agree with the audience. The way their reaction to a year and a half was fantastic. It's like my stomach said the same thing.
So in between films, I shoot commercials and I work a lot with the choreographer of this film and his assistant. And so a number like She's the One is just kind of, we could be in a rehearsal space when we're meant to be working on a commercial, and we'll be like, let's just do another version of She's the One, and we'll just shoot it out.
And the Miller Lite folks are like, I love this. What is this?
Yeah, sometimes people walk in and go, what part of the commercial is this?
Yeah.
And then we'll be in, a hotel ballroom, because we'll just be staying at a hotel, and then you find out that they've got a ballroom, and you're like, hey, let's go down and shoot She's the One in the middle of the night.
Right.
And so that's what you do. You go down and you block it out. And it's just so, it's very iterative. I just see all of it like a sketch, and you just keep sketching and sketching and sketching until it becomes clear. And sometimes it comes clear, in a few iterations, and sometimes like a number like that is just an enormous amount of versions.
Can you tell them the story of Regent Street? Because I think it's extraordinary.
So yeah, Regent Street.
I've never seen a musical number like that.
Yeah. Regent, I always walk down Regent Street in London and forever used to think, why has no one shot a musical number on this street? Because it's wide and it's curved and it's iconic. And, that to me is like, it's just screaming out for a musical number. Well, anyway, in trying to do a musical number on that street, I learned very quickly why no one's done a musical number on that street. It's Westminster Council. It's Crown land, so it's owned by the Royals. It is a bus route, and so you're dealing with the transportation. And so it's a very firm no when you tell them that you want to shut down Regent Street for 4 nights to shoot a musical number.
This is how we know you're a director, is like, but that's where I need to shoot it.
Yeah. That's so true, isn't it? You see directors walking into buildings and they hold their hand up against a wall and they're like, is this a supporting wall? That's such a director's thinking. So Regent Street, so a year and a half of paperwork, endless meetings, reports. We had to do terrorist reports. We had to do every report you can think of, for every scenario that could happen while we were shooting. And we were fortunate because the Crown Estate were very supportive. They were like, they see Robbie as the sort of, a British icon, and the idea of him having a musical number down Regent Street, they were very supportive of. But even with their support, it still took a year and a half to organize. And of course, we don't have any time. Once we're on the street, we have to just shoot. So to rehearse it, we had to go out of town to a big studio space and tape out one for one the section of Regent Street that we were shooting in. So like every bus stop, every curb, every doorway that we're running in and out of. And, we were doing it to the clock because we had to practice what it would mean on the night to get all the gear in, lay the tracks, put the crane up, get the cars in, get the double-decker bus in. And we rehearsed with the taxis, the double-decker buses, the 500 dancers. And we just ran it and kept going to see each day if we could get everything loaded in, shoot it out, and load it off in the time that we had. Because if we went past 6 a.m., which was when the traffic had to roll through, we were told very clearly that if you go over on any night, you're not shooting the next night. And as the sequence is a single shot, it's meant to appear like a single shot. If we lost any one night, we don't have the musical number.
Right.
So we really rehearsed that week until we got it down, and we had the entire crew there, all the dancers, and by the end of the week, we were this finely tuned machine, and we were ready to go for our Sunday night, and it was Friday. And the producer came to see me and he said, Michael, I've just had a call from the Crown Estate, and stupidly I'm thinking they're just wishing us luck, and it's fantastic. And he said, the Queen died last night and we're not shooting. It's 10 days of mourning after the death of the Queen. I did much more than 10 days of mourning. But in that moment, I also knew this is an independent film, so no studio is writing a check for us to do this again. We'd lost all that money. We'd already booked all the crew. We'd already paid out all the shops. Everything was paid for. So we lost the entire budget for that shoot. We had to wait for the Queen's funeral, the coronation of the King. 5 months later, they let us back to shoot that number.
5 months.
We had to raise the money again. It delayed the film's delivery by 5 months, which on an independent film meant that I started getting phone calls from the Bond. For anyone who's had to deal with a Bond, it's very unenjoyable. The bank, obviously all the loans, then we started getting penalties on the bank loans. It was one of those things where every single person on the financing side was like, drop the number. You've spent the money. You're not going to have this number. And I was like, yes, but here's the thing. It's the only number in the entire film where Rob is purely joyful. He's not seeing versions of himself. He's just in this moment where he thinks everything is going to be great and he imagines what that's going to be like.
Yeah.
And
that's one of the trickiest moments as a director, isn't it? When you know something is that important.
yeah.
You know it's at the heart of what makes the movie, and it's almost impossible to explain to anyone around you. Everyone else looks at it as a mathematical equation, and you know that it's something more spiritual than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's to them, it's we gave you the money, you spent the money, you didn't get to shoot,
and hey, you got a great singing monkey movie, like, you know,
yeah.
Be happy.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about the weight of that and what it does, and they can't hear yet the way the audience applauded the first time I saw the movie when that sequence happened.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's one of those miracles. Like I always look at that number and just think no one has any idea how close that came to not happening.
You should almost pause the movie and have Robbie Williams explain how complicated that is. It's a self-reflexive movie. Like, he could just start telling that. He's like, by the way, this is really expensive and appreciate every frame of this. All right. Okay. The thing that I don't think you had done before, this level of CG character, and one of the most successful moments, I think, in this film, and again, I mean, he's in every scene, almost every shot of the film, is that bathtub scene with his grandmother, and she's telling him the Merlin story, and it's so beautiful, and you care about this kid so much, and I'm just trying to imagine you direct these actors thinking about what this, CG character is going to look like at one point, and beyond everything you just described, which is harder than anything I've ever done on a movie, the amount of time it took, the amount of choreography, I'm curious, how do you even begin to learn how to make a movie with a character that has to be computer generated and drawn and has to emote and has to sing and has to also be wild?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same rules as like everyone knows, which is you've just got to cast the right person. You know, the actor John O'Davies, who plays Robbie in this film, is extraordinary. And everyone keeps saying to me, oh yeah, but it's Robbie's voice. And I'm like, no, it's Robbie's voice over. The voice coming out of Robbie's mouth is the actor.
Oh, interesting.
And he's done a deep dive study. Even in Robbie's younger voice, he's in a higher register. And then over the course of the film, it comes down. And the study that Jono did in the things that make Robbie Williams is just mind-blowing. And he also did this thing, which is the advantage of having digital capture, is that he knew that in every single performance I could choose any take, even if the camera's not on him.
Right.
So the camera could be an over the shoulder and he's still giving 150% and trying something new. So he became really playful. So I would go searching in these later takes when he was off camera because I knew whatever he's doing something fresh and something different to what I already had. And some of the takes in the film are from when he's not on camera. And I've gone, yeah, well, let's use this take of this performance, but yet his take is from a completely different performance. And so it started making me kind of, you get spoiled because you start looking at other people's live action performance and being like, I love everything about this shot. except their performance from take 12 is much better. And then you're like, is there any way we can, and people are just like, no, you idiot. That's what you do with a digital character. You're not taking this entire performance from take 12 and sticking it in this shot. And you go, but is that possible? Because you're dealing with some of the best visual effects artists in the world. But the little kid who plays Robbie, his name's Carter Murphy. And I'll always remember the first day with him because he's this little kid from Manchester and he's tiny. He's like this big, which immediately you just love this kid. But he's got so much front. So, because he's from the part of the world that Robbie's from. So he comes in and I go, hey, Carter. And he goes, you the guy who did Showman? I go, yeah. And he goes, you doing Showman too? And I go, probably not. And he goes, if you are, can I be in it? And I go, this is day one. I'm like, all right, mate, let's just see how this goes first.
Yeah.
And then he goes, all right, have a think about it, but get back to me within the week. I said, get back to you within the week? Who is this kid? And I was like, this is the most perfect casting ever for Robbie Williams.
That's amazing.
I love that kid. And he did it. That's him. That's a little kid singing as well. Feel.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're almost out of time, which kills me because I could ask you questions about this film for hours. I want to ask. This is the most important question to me. Is I understand so much of why Robbie Williams would want this movie made, and from a technical achievement, like I totally also I'm like. I can imagine all the different reasons you'd want to do this movie. You climbed Everest 5 times on this film. I'm curious from a storytelling point of view, what was the movie that you wanted to tell and why did you need to tell it?
That's a great question. I haven't had that question. I think that as a filmmaker, you try and find stories that connect with people always. And I also think that you sort of set out to make one thing and then it's always really surprising. And I guarantee you've had this feeling. What people take away from the film is not always necessarily what you thought would be the takeaway.
No kidding.
And it's also for moments throughout the film that you think, oh, this is a really funny moment. And then there's just crickets. And then there's something that just isn't funny at all, and the entire audience erupts in laughter, and you're sort of sitting around going, "What is going on?
Yeah. You're wrong.
I should have been laughing earlier." But I think with this, I think I have my dad's a photographer, and I have this thing with Dad where I really want to impress him. Or at least I want his approval,
Yeah, I know that story.
And so, famously, it was another very heavy digital commercial that I did years ago, like so many years ago, but it was for Evian and it was these roller skating babies. And it was sort of very early days of computer animation. And so pulling off this commercial took 4 months, which at the time on a commercial, 4 months in post is a lot of time. And I remember being back home in Australia and I was very excited about showing my dad. It's a 60-second commercial. And all I want to do, I don't care what happens with the commercial. I don't care, about anything. I'm just super excited because it's very cutting edge technology and I just want to show it to my dad and watch his mind get blown a little bit because he was the one who introduced me to computer animation. So I was like, now I'm going to show him, something truly great. And so I did the commercial in Paris. I fly back to Australia. I sit down with my dad. I'm sitting next to him like this. I put it on the big screen TV. I've already checked the sound. It's going to sound terrific. And I hit play and I'm sitting there watching it. And then I turn over and I look at my dad and my dad's like this. And I'm like, you fell asleep in a 60-second commercial. cannot believe you fell asleep. I'm kidding you. And I'm like, Dad, you fell asleep in 60-second commercial. And so that's sort of my relationship with my dad. So when I heard Rob's story, I was like, I can really relate to someone who really wants their dad's approval artistically. And so I love that aspect of the story, but I also love the aspect of, there's many aspects I love, because also what I didn't have in Showman, which was a first for me in this, was sort of what it was to step between someone's external life and internal life.
Yeah.
And I think that's, from a storytelling point of view, that's something I would probably like to explore even more. I think this was my first attempt at it, but I think, so for all those reasons, I was very excited about what it would mean to bring that to life on the screen. And then, like all things, I think that what people take away has been really enjoyable to hear what are the other aspects of the film that people connect with. And then that's, as a filmmaker, is super satisfying, because then you go, I love that I was hoping to hit these 3 things, and yet there is 8 things that people keep coming back to.
Yeah.
And that's really special, because and I think that is a credit to the people that you get involved with, the actors that you cast and what they bring. There's some actors in this film who have very, very few lines. The Kate Mulvaney, who plays Rob's mum, Alison, who plays Alison Steadman, who plays the Nan. Like, there's not a lot of screen time on them, and they really pack a punch. So again, it's a credit to the people that you assemble, and you do the same with your casts, and it's incredible what they bring to the story, and then emotionally the connection that audiences have with them.
Michael, beyond being a brilliant filmmaker, you were a lovely guy, and you were a wonderful interview, and we are all really grateful that we got to hear you talk tonight. Thank you for this film, and we are all excited for whatever you make next. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Cheers, mate. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.